it has all been about sports rorts in the House. A lot of questions coming from Labor, in particular this question over whether the government was operating in caretaker mode when these sports grants were approved.
Yeah, caretaker mode was one issue, and the suggestion very much that was the case. And Scott Morrison accused Labor of hypocrisy, saying they made a big decision on advertising in caretaker mode in 2013 election campaign. But essentially the bigger question than that is an attempt by Anthony Albanese to say that Scott Morrison's misled the Parliament and the public over the role of his office and himself in the so-called sports rorts grants. And this relates to the fact that on April 10, the then Sports Minister, last year, the then Sports Minister Bridget McKenzie's office emailed a spreadsheet with a list dated and signed by the Minister April 4, and there were subsequent communications between the Minister's office and the Prime Minister's office, and then one grant was put in, one taken out, and 9 new grants went in. The Prime Minister maintains that he wasn't responsible for those 9 grants. He seems to lay the blame for that at Bridget McKenzie. Let's have a listen to some of those exchanges in question time around this issue now.
Looks like we maybe don't have that clip ready just yet.
Here we go.
We're going back to the House. The division is underway. It seems like the Speaker might be ruling on that in just a moment. But Andrew, did you think that what we were seeing from the opposition, this is going to really be impacting them in a number of ways? And what we are seeing is this has been going for 6 weeks now, the sports rorts saga. Do you think that there's any chance this is going to die off after these 7 weeks?
Well, absolutely not. And one of the big reasons for that is that Bridget McKenzie is set to give evidence. And I guess she will look at, or she will be asked to explain the role of the Prime Minister's office, if he had any, and that will really put her on the spot. And don't forget, Scott Morrison forced her to resign. So will she dump on the Prime Minister or convey that he might have had more of a role than he's previously said? We'll find out in about 2 weeks' time. Her office told me yesterday she was likely to appear. I think we have those exchanges from question time now. Let's have a listen if we can. Try again.
How can the Prime Minister claim he simply passed on information on the corrupt sports rorts scheme when the Audit Office told Parliament last night the list of sports rorts projects was changed after the election was called, and I quote the Audit Office here, quote them, at the request of the Prime Minister's office?
I simply say again, as I've said, Mr Speaker, in this House before and going back to my press club address earlier in the year, what my office did was very straightforward. They passed on information based on the representations made to us, and that included information about other funding options or programs relevant to project proposals, Mr Speaker.
Can the Prime Minister confirm that, contrary to his repeated statements that Senator McKenzie alone determined sports rorts funding on 4 April, at 12:35 on the 11th of April, Senator McKenzie's office sent a list of projects to the Prime Minister's office, with 1 project removed and 9 new projects added, and minutes later at 12:43 p.m, Senator McKenzie's office sent the final revised list of projects to Sport Australia?
I am not responsible for the email service in the former Minister's office, Mr Speaker.
Members on my left, the member for Isaacs.
I further member to the evidence by Mr Boyd that was provided regarding the issues that he's just raised, and it says that the changes made later that day, the 12:43 version, none of them were evident as it being the request of the Prime Minister's office rather than the Minister's office.
Is the Prime Minister aware that after the election was called, Senator McKenzie's office sent not 1 but 2 emails to Sport Australia allocating sports rorts funding, one at 8:46 a.m. and another at 12:43 p.m. Is he also aware that the second email at 12:43 p.m. removed 1 project and added 9 more?
The Leader of the Opposition has simply just set out evidence that was provided in the Senate today.
So the Prime Minister not too happy to be answering those questions. He's maintained all along his office just made representations on the grants that he wasn't the decision maker. Bridget McKenzie was. Bridget McKenzie eventually fell on her sword over a grant to a gun club she was a member of, so kind of outside the whole sports rort scandal. But